Hi everyone, welcome back to another continuing education check-in. Today we're switching it up a bit. We're talking about conflict, and we're talking specifically about a tool that you can use to approach conflict, which is called the awareness wheel. And so this episode, we're going to title it Using the Awareness Wheel for Hard Conversations. And to get us started, I'm going to talk a little bit about the awareness wheel. I'm going to try to show a picture on the screen for everyone watching on video. The picture that you're seeing, Sania, is not exactly what I was thinking for the awareness wheel, but it's good enough to get us started. And then I would try to draw it out myself. And so the awareness wheel, different people break it up into different segments. We're going to use 4 main themes today. And these are topics that you can use to structure your conversation when you need to have a really difficult conversation. And so this can be used in relationships. This can be used in friendships with your family. It doesn't matter. It's any time that something has happened that has bothered you, we can use this tool to talk to other people. And actually, before I get into the awareness wheel, how do we tend to have these hard conversations when they pop up?
Well, personally, before this podcast, I used to either just go mute or let the feelings build up until it comes out attacky.
Yeah.
Lately, I've been trying to, have the hard conversations because if you can't have the hard conversation, what is even the point of your relationship? But I feel like even now, it still in some ways comes out a little maybe triggering for the other person to hear. Yeah. And it comes out offensively. Mm-hmm. So I'm really looking forward to this episode to learn better strategies and ways to express myself when I'm feeling a lot of feelings.
Yeah. I think for me, I relate to that a lot. I'm naturally pretty conflict averse. Mm-hmm. And so if I can avoid having a hard conversation, I'm going to avoid it. And so most of the time that looks like me putting up with someone else's actions that I might not like. Mm-hmm. And so when I've had roommates in the past and they would do things, I just wouldn't bring it up because I'm not trying to stir the pot and make my living situation more difficult. So I'm not going to cause any trouble. And then I think as when I will try to talk it out, then there's times when I don't do it well either because I think naturally I lack patience. And so a lot of these times when I have to have a hard conversation, I want immediate results. And also I just want to say my piece really quickly. And when my answers are short and I'm not effectively talking about why I'm frustrated in the first place or what is really going on in my head, then the other person, to them, it just comes out as me being mad at them and me taking out my anger on them. And so the awareness wheel is used so even if you're afraid to have hard conversations, or if you're not and your words just kind of come out a little harsh every time, this is a good tool to use to make these conversations a lot easier. And so the 4 steps that I want to talk about are starting out with talking about your observations and what you experienced personally.
So it's your POV.
Exactly. So speaking very objectively and only about yourself, using words like I noticed and this is what I experienced on this day. So let's take an example where someone ghosted you. And so if I were to use the awareness wheel, the first step, observation, I would say, and let's say we're finally able to have a conversation face to face, I would say, hey, I noticed that you've kind of gone radio silent in the past few weeks, and I texted you and there was no response back. that's the observation phase. So it's very quick. You're just telling the facts and you're just focusing on yourself. The next one is talking about your feelings and what was going on in your head when all of these things were playing out. So if I were to continue the conversation, I would say, when you didn't get back to me, it was confusing because I thought that we had a really good talk and the conversation was going really well, and I was nervous that maybe I said something wrong to hurt you, and I also felt like maybe you weren't into this as much as I was. And so that's kind of the second stage of the awareness.
Which is a hard sentence to say out loud.
Yeah, it is.
Because you're feeling a lot of emotions when you're saying it, but also like the other person is also feeling very attacked, I guess.
Yeah.
When you're saying it to them.
Right. The next one we're going to call intuition, and we're going to call this like reasoning. So intuition or reasoning, and in the next phase, this looks like you trying to understand the other person's side of the story. Putting yourself in their shoes and then trying to verbalize what might be going on. And in this step, you're trying to assume the best in the other person and not jump to any conclusions.
Wow, I think that might be the hardest step that you brought up so far.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you do this, Ethan, or if people outside, like out there could relate, but like usually when you're acting or speaking out of a place of hurt, you're already assumed the worst in the other person.
Right.
And so like it's hard to see like the best in them in that moment.
Right.
You know?
So the goal is to do this while being true to yourself. So you're not trying to like discount everything that you've just said. But this is a way that you can create the next question and ask them how they feel about all of this without coming off very accusing or abrasive.
Okay.
And so what I would say in this reasoning period is, I understand, or not I understand, but you might be going through a really hard time at work or with your family. And I know there's like tons of reasons why it's hard to reply. And I know that you're really busy. I know that you're juggling all these relationships and responsibilities. And that can make it hard to respond. And I understand that. And in this like reasoning time, you can also dip back into your feelings. And so at this point, I would say something like, but because I didn't know why you weren't responding, I felt hurt because I didn't know what's going on. And it was such a big change from what or how we were talking a few days ago or a week ago. And so, Sania, now that you've heard me talking through these first three stages, let's say I was talking to you. You were the one who ghosted me. How would you feel if I was like bring this up in this way?
I think if you're able to do it in this calm tone, I'm not personally feeling triggered. I have definitely had instances where maybe I'm not super interested in the person I'm talking to, and like it could be perceived as I was ghosting them. But in those instances, people reached out to me in a very accusatory tone. It was like, oh, you did this. The statements weren't I. It had nothing to do with them. It was all making a story that they made up in their head so that they could go to sleep peacefully at night, and like imposing that on me and being like, oh, you're a bad person because you can't text me back, and what's wrong with me? I thought everything was like, and it just like put me in this uncomfortable position because like, how do I answer this?
Yeah.
But the way that you specifically are going through it, you know, you're talking about your feelings and like all the observations and things like that. And then I think the most critical one here is for me to be able to receive your comments in a good way. You're kind of you're making it feel like easier. You're taking a lot of the pressure off. And I feel like that's really important. You're not accusing.
Yeah.
You're like asking questions and letting the other person feel like they have room to answer, as opposed to being like, oh, you're just like a bad person and like you just think this, and like imposing your beliefs onto them.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. I think starting off with the facts and then also focusing on yourself first.
Yeah.
It just allows the stakes to be lowered and the pressure to be removed. So that leads us to the fourth thing, which we'll call action.
Okay.
And so in this phase, you want to ask the other person, what are steps that you guys can take to make this better or resolve
the
this?
Solution.
Exactly. And yeah, we can call it the solution step. And so I would ask, how do you feel about everything that I say? Can you help me understand where you're coming from? And then also, can we talk about how to make this better or improve this situation for the both of us? So now very quickly, I'm going to just put it all together.
Okay.
As if I was just having this conversation live.
Okay.
The goal for me is to make this as concise as possible. I don't want to be yapping the whole time. And I want to be very clear in hitting each of these 4 points. So I'm going to try my best. So, Sania, I'm really glad that we get to talk. And I just wanted to bring up how a few weeks ago, we were texting back and forth. And I noticed all of a sudden you had stopped replying. And it kind of came at a time when there was a lot of back and forth. I thought that we were having a good conversation about our families, and it felt like it just fell off all of a sudden. And for me, I didn't really know what to do about it because the conversation felt so good beforehand, and I was scared that I did something to offend you. And I think for me, it's hard to know what to do when someone else doesn't reply. And I know that sometimes it's hard for you to reply. Like you told me yourself, like you're juggling all these things, you're doing a podcast, you have your own job. And then you have like all these friendships that you're juggling. So I understand like it could be hard. It was just hard for me in that moment because there was like so much back and forth. And then we had been seeing each other a lot and hanging out a lot. And it was just a big change for me. And so I wanted to ask you if you notice the same thing and if you feel the same way about this, and how can we, like, I don't want this to happen again, and I wanted to ask you if there's any way to do this differently next time.
Wow. I feel like in the middle there when you were talking about, if I feel the same feelings, it was it could have potential to lose the other person because obviously they did the thing, so they're probably not feeling what you're feeling. But as soon as you like brought it back to like, before you finished your little spiel, you brought it back to actions like, hey, this happened, but I'd like to not go through this again. What can we do? I feel like that was perfect. That put me on like the hot seat, so to speak, and be like, okay, like what can we do different? And then obviously in thinking of what we can do different, I have to go through in my mind of like, oh, why did this happen in the first place?
Yeah.
So you're kind of getting the answer to the why, and if they felt the same way, in like what their answer is to the action. So I would say in general, it's not easy to do this. Oh, definitely. Yeah.
So right now, like, I have no beef with Sania, so it's easy for me to like talk about it because this situation didn't actually happen. And a lot of times when I'm upset at someone, it's hard for me to be this calm.
Oh, 100%.
And so I think there's like two strategies when using the awareness wheel to actually use it well. Is first, you wait until you're calmer. And so not doing it in the heat of the moment, because it's hard to like follow this path when you're really angry and emotional.
Because then you can't even get your thoughts straight. You
Yeah.
can't even figure out what you're feeling that's upsetting you so much. It might be, I don't know, I'll be the first to admit this, it might be embarrassing to feel some of the things you're feeling. You know, if their lack of texting is making you feel like unwanted, kind of, like that could be kind of bad. And stuff like that. In the heat of the moment, it can be hard to feel your feelings.
Yeah.
And like, especially to admit to them, because you're putting yourself in a more, like you're already feeling vulnerable, and then admitting to that vulnerability in front of your partner, it's like, you know, you're kind of doubling down on it. So I think it's really good that you complete the whole wheel. You bring it down to the action to say, because obviously sometimes if your partner is hearing that you're hurt, they could feel guilty. They'd be like, oh man, what did I do? Like, I thought everything was going well. So if you bring it back to the action, it could be like, hey, we're a team. I was feeling sad. What can we as a team do so that I'm not feeling like this anymore?
Yeah, definitely. I'm with you on that. And then I think the other thing that you can do to just be fair to yourself and what you're feeling is to write this down. So we'll have like an image on the screen, and write down how you want to have this conversation. Write down your observations and what you noticed, and then write down how you were feeling in the moment and also how you're feeling now. And then write down the reasons, or not the reasons, but where you think the other person might be coming from. And then write down like how you can ask the other person to take action. You can also write down ideas for solutions that you thought of. And I think those are also fair to bring up. And so I could ask you, Sania, and say, like, I totally understand that it could have just been like a hard period for you to respond quickly. But if this is not, if like I'm a hard person to respond to, or if you feel like I'm coming on too strong, or I'm like trauma dumping or something, like please just let me know. And I can like also pull away. And so coming up with the solutions also takes a lot of self-awareness and willingness to kind of put yourself a little lower. Because what I just did was I gave Sania the option to pull away from the relationship with not a lot of cost.
Right.
So writing it down really helps. This is a good way to just sort out your thoughts and then make sure you're ready when you're actually going to have this conversation.
Do you think people should bring these notes with them? Because I know sometimes people feel uneasy that it's like, oh, you can't communicate with me like face to face. Like you need to have like this crutch. So do you suggest people just write it down to get clarity in their own mind of their own thoughts and then try to just go from there?
I think that if you feel uncomfortable about having a conversation like this, maybe you're not used to it, I think it's totally okay to bring your notes, and it's okay to practice beforehand. And I promise the more that you do this, the easier it will get. And maybe the next time you won't need your notes, or maybe the next time you just need to practice a few times with a close friend or by yourself. And then the time after that, you don't need anything. And I think that if someone came up to me and they had like a sheet of paper with these notes and they're talking to me, it would seem even more earnest and like coming from the heart, that they like put a lot of thought and intention to like prepare for this. But then if they framed it the way that we discussed, like I'm not feeling attacked at all. I think I'm okay with it.
Yeah, then I think it's definitely a good idea to write, because sometimes like it is important, like it is helpful to see things down on like pen and paper. So
yeah, compared to like the other methods of like having hard conversations.
What are other methods of having hard conversations?
Like what we discussed. So like giving silent treatment and like forcing the other person to like come to us first and say, oh, like, is everything okay?
Yeah.
So that's like one other method to like start the conversation.
Right.
Another method is you try to prove that you're right, and the whole conversation becomes,
I'm right, you're wrong, you hurt me, you're horrible.
yeah, exactly. This is what you did. This is how you made me feel.
Very focused on them.
Yeah. It could also be very focused on you, but you're not assuming the best in them when you talk in a very accusing way.
Right.
And you're giving them like zero benefit of the doubt.
Right.
And so compared to like those methods, okay, I think it's kind of clear. We've talked about the advantages. But do you think like there are disadvantages using this method compared to others?
The only disadvantage I see is like that it's a lot of steps to remember.
It's 4.
Let's say in the heat of the moment. So
Okay.
I think, silent treatment, it's easy. You don't need to remember anything.
Yeah.
It's not effective, like don't get me wrong, but it's like you can kind of just do it. This one I think is a method that in the long run will definitely have way more benefits, but you have to practice it.
Yeah.
You have to like make an active decision that like, okay, from now on, when I'm having these difficult conversations with, like Ethan said, my partner, my family, my friends, I'm going to make this step to step away when I'm feeling heated, let them know I'm going to be back, note down my thoughts, and come back either with my notes or without, but just more prepared to try to use this framework when I'm speaking.
Yeah.
And I think a huge thing that we haven't really touched on, we kind of like, I don't know, skim by it here and there, but is like your tone. You have to remember that when you're actually in that moment delivering this, obviously in some way, shape, or form, you're saying something that the other person may not want to hear, or something that maybe they're not aware of. And so they might feel like a little blindsided. So I think it's important to, while you're doing your prep and maybe you're practicing in the mirror, which is fine too, you just need to like be mindful of your tone. And if you need to tell yourself, like I think sometimes, like Ethan and I have talked about, when you're speaking from hurt, your tone gets really messed up. And Ethan's given great tips of like, oh, remember the end goal. Is your end goal that you want to separate from this person? Because then like go off like whatever tone you want. But if your end goal is like, hey, I still love them, this is my partner, I'm upset because I want more closeness that I'm getting, whatever, something like that, then don't be afraid that the outcome is going to be bad. Like don't be afraid of the outcome, because that's going to make you speak worse, like from a place of fear, and it'll be more accusing and like harder to control your emotions.
Yeah.
Speak in like this, like me and my partner are on the same page. This is just a misunderstanding versus both of us. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like using this strategy in general kind of forces you to reframe how you think about the conflict in general, because you're forced to, you focus on yourself first, but then you also give them the benefit of the doubt, which is really uncomfortable. But in the long run, this is not like to prove that you're better than them. But I will say, like, when you use this method, you're treating them with a lot of love. And so even if they were the ones who messed up and they were the ones who treated you like crap, like if you use this method and you do it in a kind way, it's gonna have like even bigger impact on them.
100% true. Like Ethan said, like, because if you're graceful under pressure, people remember that, because they know it's not easy to do that.
Yeah.
Like if it was easy, we would all be doing it. We would all be nice when we're feeling hurt, or when we're the ones that are not wrong.
Right.
So, yeah, I completely agree with this.
Yeah, because let's say the other person was wrong. Like, they ghosted you, they intentionally did it, and they just did it because they didn't like you. If you do it this way, then, like, first of all, it's, if they feel any remorse, they're going to feel it stronger this way, because you've like laid out everything in a very straightforward way.
Yeah, it's easier for them to understand.
If you attack them and you like pointed fingers at them and just try to get your way,
And they're gonna
get
defensive.
exactly.
Yeah.
And it actually doesn't help anyone because they might be forced into this position where they don't admit that they're wrong. And the thing is, like, if you use this method, you keep all the power in your hands. So let's say you use the awareness wheel, they don't admit that they're wrong. Well, then you can walk away from the situation and say, and confidently say that you did everything that you can.
That's super
You left
true.
it all on the table. It's on the other person that things didn't work out.
Right.
And then if you use this and it does work, now you have the other person's respect because you did it in a kind way. But then also, like, you have a stronger relationship now because there is a clear solution and they know you better. They know why this triggered you and how you feel in these situations. So it's really a win-win.
I totally agree.
I will say, like, the other cons for me about using this method is that it's I don't think you can really use it in the heat of the moment because the emotions are running high, so you kind of have to wait.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, Sania, but I really hate to wait sometimes.
Yeah.
Because I just want things to get better, or actually more often I just want my way.
Yeah.
So even if
I just want to be understood, and then I want my way.
Exactly. And so, like, I think, like, for me, becoming more mature means that I recognize that getting my way doesn't make the whole situation better, actually. And sometimes waiting, letting the emotions come down, will actually lead to a better outcome. But that is one con that it's hard to do right
And
away.
sometimes the other person is not ready when you say you need to take a minute. Because, like, not saying that they're super not understanding, but, like, maybe they have a bad past with, like, people taking a minute and then disappearing. You know? So, like, the other person has to give you the space to, like, compose your thoughts in this method.
Yeah.
And again, I am a firm believer, if you do try it enough and, like, really, like, make an active decision to implement this method, I'm sure with time it'll just become easier and it'll become natural.
Yeah.
And you won't need to take that time, but definitely in the beginning. Yeah, I see that as a problem.
Yeah. The other consequence that I thought of that I think is big for me is using the awareness wheel actually doesn't make the conversation that much more comfortable or easy.
Right.
Like, if I were to use this, I would still be really scared of confrontation.
Yeah.
And this doesn't make that process easier. But I will say that all the methods to approach conflict in hard conversations are not easy.
Yeah.
So, for me, my default is silent treatment. So at the beginning, the silent treatment is definitely easier because I don't have to think about it. It's an immediate reaction. I get instant gratification. But then it becomes way harder because then the relationship gets messed up and I just introduced extra tension. This way starts off harder because I can't react in the moment. I have to make sure I get my thoughts together and also assume the best in the other person.
Which is hard.
But then it gets easier. So I think all of them have the same level of hardness overall. I just recognize that for people who aren't good at having harder conversations, this is still hard for all of us.
No, it definitely is. But I think, it's important you said that all the methods are hard. But, like, with this method specifically, like, at least you're going easier on your partner. With silent treatment, your partner's being dragged down this whirlpool that you're going through, this, like, you know, if you're spiraling, they're coming down on the trip with you. But with this method, you don't have to pull them down. If you're starting to feel bad and if you're proactive enough about your feelings before you even start spiraling, you can communicate it, and you're communicating it in a non-offensive, non-attacky way, so then your partner doesn't feel like bad about it either.
Yeah.
But, you know, silent treatment, yelling, trying to get your way, pouting so that they come and see if you're okay, like, those are things that, like, impact the other person. And I think that's important to know. So, you know, if you care about your partner enough, you should try to implement this method where you can.
Yeah.
Ethan, I wanted to ask you, because this is something you've said a couple of times now, giving your partner the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
I don't know if this has to be another episode, but I think minds tend to focus on the negative. We've talked about this before.
Yeah.
How does one do this when implementing? Let's focus on just this method. How does one try to, when I'm writing out my feelings and things like that, how can I stop my feelings from spiraling into like, oh, and he hates me, he never liked me enough, like he's gonna break up with me, or like I don't mean enough to him.
Yeah.
And like going to those super dark places.
Yeah, so the best way that I think I can explain it is, and it's reflected in what you just said, in that spiral, because when you don't assume the best in someone, you have taken their actions and then you have made a statement about their character. You weave together a narrative about who they are as a person based on an action or like a group of actions. But we all know, even for ourselves, that we are not shaped by one action or even like a couple of instances.
That's true.
We are shaped by a lot of history with our family, with how people treated us at school, with how well we did at school and at work. All these other factors shape us to be who we are. And when we do that to someone else, well, first of all, we wouldn't want anyone to do that to us and dilute who we are as a person into a few bad actions. Because we all have a few bad actions in our life. We're not perfect. We all mess up. And so I would say that the best way to assume the best about another person is in the moment, if you can, or maybe a little later when you're by yourself and you can either reflect or write down, if you can think of at least one reason why they might have acted the way that they acted, then tell yourself
that is the truth.
There's a chance that can be the truth.
Okay.
If there is even a chance that they acted the way they acted without the intention of harming you, or even if you think they had the intention of harming you, that this is not who they are as a person, this is an isolated instance, then tell yourself, okay, then I need to hear the rest of the story. If your desire is to hear the rest of the story instead of pinning them down, then like you can begin to like, kind of let go of the bitterness and anger.
Okay.
And I say this, and I'm not even good at doing this.
Oh my God, I suck at it.
I'm not.
Maybe we do an episode on giving people the benefit of the doubt. I think that's a really important skill that people have to adopt, especially if you're very, like, I consider myself to be a very defensive person. And so, like, the tiniest little things can, like, make me feel like everyone is against me.
Yeah.
And then I just assume the worst, and then assume, I act on it, assuming that it is correct.
Yeah.
So I think that's an important thing that maybe we can talk about.
Yeah. And I know, like, it sounds very idealized when we talk about this, and it can come down to, like, very simple things like someone not replying to you, or maybe they always heart your messages, but then this time they just did a thumbs up, or maybe you found out that your friend started a group chat without you.
Oh, yeah.
It's in all of these instances, it's really hard to assume the best in the other person. Because it's like, duh, it's so obvious they're excluding me. They're cutting me out. Like, obviously they have bad intentions. And maybe they do, but you don't know maybe the full story just yet, and this tool, the awareness wheel, is going to allow you to know the full story so you can make a better informed decision.
I feel like assuming the worst in people honestly stems from, like, I don't know, lack of self-confidence, I want to say.
Yeah.
Because you're assuming that you're that easy to be not included in a group. You're forgetting that you have worth and you have value. And, like, obviously when you're in that negative spiral, you're only thinking those bad thoughts, but it is important to remember the good thoughts. This made me think of a funny story, just because I feel like the episode's getting kind of heavy. In my master's year, I was walking to the bus stop with one of my classmates. So I had like a core group of friends, and then, I had my classmates. I was walking to the bus stop, and, our whole class was planning a trip to Napa Valley for like wine tasting. And I was walking with this classmate who seems to know a lot about wine, and while we were talking, it came, like, we concluded that, you know what, maybe the wine trip cannot, like the Napa trip cannot happen. Okay? And this friend suggested, like, why don't we like do just like a wine night at like your house? So this friend created a group chat. He added people to this group chat. Now the order that he added people to the group chat in was an order that offended one of my very close friends. And this party was going to be at my house. She was like the third or fourth or fifth one added, so she didn't even know what the group chat was about. There was like messages in there before she got added. Mind you, this is all happening in like the walk to the bus stop and me taking the bus home. I haven't even gotten home yet. And she just started spiraling. She called our other friend and she's like, oh my God, Sania hates me. Like, she didn't even tell me she wanted to do a party. Like, I feel so left out. Like, why? I'm her best friend. I should have been the one like behind the scenes helping her make the group chat. And she like went on this huge, assuming the worst spiral. And then finally, by the time I got home, I showered, I got a call from her and she's like, yeah, so I feel sad that you like da da da. And she said it in such a sweet way that I honestly felt guilty. And I was like, oh my God, like, I didn't even like think about this. This was like such like a not even a thought. Like, of course you mean a lot to me, da da da. And I could use that situation to assure her. In that same situation, had she called me and been like, oh, so you're besties with this person now? Like, this one's going to be, like, the one making the group chat? Even though I didn't have bad intentions, I would have reacted negatively. Yeah. Because I'm being attacked.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's important to, I think, the point of the story is it's important to also think about moments where, you know, maybe people think that you're doing the worst for them and you're genuinely not. It's just something maybe you overlooked. Maybe you had a long day at work. Maybe you're not feeling well. Whatever it is. And like, if you can reason your actions that hurt other people, you should also be able to give other people's actions possible reasons.
Yeah. I just realized, I think that story is great because it clearly shows that sometimes we do things with good intentions and then the results affect people and rub them the wrong way. And that doesn't mean that we had bad intentions.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, like, you guys can use this example and remember, oh, maybe this person that you're upset at was in Sania's shoes and just a little misunderstood in the moment. One thing that I thought of is that when you try to assume the best in the other person and give them the benefit of the doubt, you should also give yourself the benefit of the doubt in that moment. So ask yourself, why do I feel so emotional about this? Am I having a bad day? Are other people treating me badly? And maybe the reason why you're so upset is actually not because of what the other person did, but just because you feel like a lot of things are going wrong or are kind of spiraling out of control. And if that is like the actual issue, then you kind of know what to reach out and ask for help for. Because a lot of times, like, we'll lash out at people just because we had a hard day.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's way harder to give grace to yourself.
Yeah.
Like, we're talking about the first step, give the other person benefit of the doubt, but giving it to yourself is like another step completely. And like we said, these are all hard things, but they're important. That's how you communicate healthy, and you need to have that healthy communication in order. Like, I think that's like the one consistent thing I've seen in all the healthy relationships that I've seen. It's the communication.
Yeah.
It is not the amount of years that they were together. It is not whether they lived together before marriage or not. It is literally, how do they communicate?
Yeah.
Because disagreements are going to come up. They're going to be big. They're going to be small. But it's like, how do you bring up these difficult conversations? And then how do you as a team resolve them? Are you always going to be at loggerheads every time you bring it up? Because then maybe you guys aren't really that good at communicating with each other, and like, maybe that's not the person for you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. The last thing that I want to say is I want to bring back an example that you gave a long time ago.
Oh, no.
I don't even remember which episode this was in. No, this is a good example. But you were talking about how you had this friend who navigated a tough roommate situation really well. And so what happened was there's like these like roommates living together. They have a schedule of chores, and then one of the roommates like did not follow the schedule and did not do the chores when they were supposed to do it. And so the other roommates got really pissed. They were like ready to, or they actually like
said some harsh things.
Yeah, they like singled that person out, and they were like, oh, like, why did you not do it? Like, you should know, it's on the schedule. But then like in this scenario, the person that you talked about, Sania, like approached the situation in a very diplomatic way and said, like, maybe you can't do it this week, and we can fill in, but maybe next week you can do it. And I think that is an example of how you need to understand like what exactly is really the problem. In a situation like that, yes, the other person caused the problem, but the problem at hand is that there could be different things, but the major problem is the dishes are not done and other people need to use them and they're in the sink.
Right.
And then there's like other problems where it's like, okay, maybe the schedule is not working for the chores.
Right.
But I think, I don't do this well, but if you reach a point where like you've matured, you recognize that the actual problem might not be the person. Like, it's an instance where they messed up. Focusing on the actual problem first, and then giving the other person like time and space to like fix themselves is actually like what makes a problem better.
Right.
Like, I can lash out and make the other person feel bad and feel responsible, but it's not going to actually fix the dishes in the sink.
That's true.
And so I think for me, like, speaking to myself now, I need to do a better job and remember in the moment, is what I'm saying trying to fix the actual problem, or am I just trying to
make this person feel bad?
Exactly. And say my piece.
That's super true.
Yeah.
Yeah. In that particular situation, the person who was lashing out at the person who didn't do their chores, you know, in some ways you could think he was right, because this person didn't do what they were supposed to. Like, there was a schedule, they missed it. And, like, you could just be stuck on that and argue that till the day you die. And, like, yes, you are right. But at the end of the day, that the dishes didn't get done. What do you do moving forward? I think it gets really hard. And I have definitely been a victim of this so much. It feels so hard to, like, think about what comes after this. Like, yes, this is the problem. Like, yes, I can agree with you. You are right. I should have done the chores. But, like, what next? I missed it. What do I do now? Like, are you kicking me out of the house now because I missed the chores? And definitely I've been in the position where I wanted to kick people out of the house because they missed their chores. But it's like, okay, you missed this week. And that's what the friend did in that situation. He said, okay, you missed this week. Someone else had to do it. So you're going to switch weeks with them. And you'll do it this other week. The problem's kind of solved now. And if you want to go back and be like, yeah, but they didn't do the right thing. Well, they will when they do it again, when they do the chores in 2 weeks from now.
Yeah.
So everything gets all resolved.
Right. And they're more willing to solve
it. Yeah, because you're focused on the solution as opposed to driving it down, like hammer into the nail of like, oh, but this is the problem and this is why I'm hurt and this I need you to understand and the problem. And it's like, dude, you've talked about the problem a lot. Like, what about the solution?
Yeah, I love that.
Wow, good talks this episode.
Yeah. I didn't feel like this was too heavy.
Yeah.
I feel like this is really healthy.
It is very healthy.
Yeah.
It's very, I'll raise my hand, very hard to implement.
Oh, me too.
I'm trying. We'll try our best. And we challenge you guys to also try your best. Because, yeah, if you care about the people in your life, you want to be always respectful to them. Even when you're hurt.
And I just want to give a quick shout out to my friend Mike. He was the one who first taught me about the awareness wheel about a year ago. Wow. And gave me the idea.
Still haven't implemented it though, huh? I'm kidding.
Bro.
I'm kidding.
Okay, you see, I'm going to assume the best in Sania and we're going to move on. And so, thank you, Mike. Today, to wrap up the episode, we're going back to Dapper Slap, bringing it back. And so we have a couple different situations this time, and we're going to say how we're going to treat our friend if they told us that they did these things. Okay, so the first one, they consistently justify their partner's behavior. So let's say their partner is treating them poorly, and they keep defending their partner and saying, oh, like he's not really like that.
He's just having a bad week.
Yeah. But like he's actually like hitting you and like manipulating you, gaslighting you.
Okay. Be like 3, 2, 1.
Okay, slap for both of us.
Go ahead.
I will say it's kind of obvious why we would say slap.
Right.
But
you gave the example of like hitting someone.
yeah. But I guess what I want to focus on is how do you tell whether or not they're trying to justify their partner versus they are assuming the best in their partner? And like, how do you tell if it's like a one-time thing versus like this is actually a problem and it's repeated?
Ooh, that's a good thing to talk about.
Yeah.
I feel like if they're consistently always on their partner's side, maybe their partner is like God sent and he is, or they are perfect. But I think it's really, really rare for someone's partner to be so perfect. And so if they are constantly justifying their actions and seeing the best in them, like maybe they've got their Delulu glasses on and it's just hard for them even to like check in with reality and be like, oh, like, you know, it was not okay when I told my partner I was upset and they didn't want to talk about it or do anything about it. Like that was not okay.
Right. I will say there are like some nuances. Like one thing is, I would say if they've never told you about a conflict or it seems like they've never had a conflict, then that's kind of a flag, because in healthy relationships, like no two people exactly think the same.
Yeah.
Like everyone's going to be butting heads and there's going to be conflicts, like some that you handle well, some that you don't. But by conflicts, I mean like disagreements and stuff. And so if your friend never brings up any conflicts, that can be a signal that they're constantly justifying the partner's
and like
behavior.
maybe you're the friend that they don't confess all of their partner's stuff to. Maybe they have a different friend for that, which is fine. But like if you are seeing some potentially alarming actions, like your friend is constantly checking their phone on a night out because they're worried that their partner is going to get upset, things like that. And if you bring them up and your partner gets and your friend gets defensive, like that's not a good look.
Yeah.
I do want to talk, Ethan, just quickly about like a subset of this category or this like situation, which is like when, you know, you're not only justifying your partner's behaviors and their things and their actions, but you're kind of like saying everything is your own fault. I think we both know somebody that, and we both know many people. I've totally been in that situation where I'm like, oh no, like he's perfect. Like if I just communicated myself better, like he would work hard to like come up with a solution.
Yeah.
And it's like hard in that situation because like, yeah, that could be true. But it could also be true that your partner is bad. Like it could be true that both of you have some work to do.
Right. But when it's every single time, then yeah, that makes it really tricky. Something else that you can look for is if they have like swings in their emotion or their stories. So sometimes their stories change day to day, or one day they're really like stressed out about their partner and then the next day they're perfectly fine. A lot of times there's a chance that there's like some like manipulation going on behind the scenes, and so like they switch up. And I will say, like, if your friend falls in this situation, they could be in danger. And so, like, it's important for you to also understand their partner and where their partner is coming from. And one of the first signs of abuse is that the abuser has a sense of entitlement in their life. So look for signs where when they feel entitled, they don't treat wait staff well, they expect certain results when they put in effort in something. It comes out in very subtle ways, but it kind of centers around this big ego and entitlement and feeling like they deserve stuff. Man, I don't know if I planned for that discussion to go there.
Yeah, it's just like, that's kind of deep.
Okay, so...
It's a dap, it's a slap in general.
It's a big slap.
Yeah.
Okay, but you have to differentiate. The next situation, they have regular check-ins on their relationship.
Okay, are you ready?
Yeah.
3, 2, 1.
Okay, we're both at a depth.
I was kind of considering being neutral for
Yeah.
this one.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I don't know if like you need to have the regular check-in, but I do actually, thinking about it more.
Yeah.
I think there's nothing bad that could come out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think oftentimes when you get so used to your day-to-day routine, your relationship, you forget to check in on how things are going and how both of you are feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it has definitely way more benefits than not benefits. So you should do it.
Yeah, for sure. I think that some people might feel like, oh, if we have check-ins that are regular, it feels like too formal.
Like a meeting.
Exactly. It feels like business meeting. You have to put it on your calendar, and it doesn't feel so natural. But I think in a lot of ways, it can make your relationship a lot more fluid and feel natural. For example, when things are going well in your relationship and it's sunshine and rainbows every day, it's amazing. It's one of the best feelings in the world. Mm-hmm. But a lot of times, it's just because there hasn't been an obstacle or a stressor thrown your way in that moment. Mm-hmm. And once that comes, and it will because life sucks sometimes, then it almost feels like things fall apart. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't mean that the sunshine and rainbows was fake. Mm-hmm. Like, that was actually there. But then there was just like flags that you weren't thinking about because things were so good and you didn't have to worry about your car breaking down. It just takes like little triggers like that for you to realize something new about your partner. Mm-hmm. And so having regular check-ins just makes sure that you understand like if the other person is happy in the relationship right now and what they would like to see more of or less of. And that way it doesn't have to take a external stressor for you to like
bring up those things
and maybe have conflict over.
Very good idea.
Okay, the next one, hopefully this one is a little more like not obvious, but they don't bring up their history with other people.
Oh God. Okay, I think I'm going to be answering for Sania. Maybe potentially other people out there can relate.
Okay.
Do you think you're feeling ready?
Yeah, I think I'm ready.
Okay, 3, 2, 1.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, okay, you go first. We're both at a slap.
We're both at a slap.
Expect.
I didn't expect it either.
Okay.
Sometimes I'm in the boat of like, I don't want to know. Ignorance is bliss.
Yeah.
But the only reason I said slap is, I don't know, I guess maybe we need to give a little more context to this dap or slap statement. They don't bring up their history with other people. If you're asking about it, I think they should answer what you're asking. If you're asking and they're still not being forthcoming with the details, that's a slap. And that's why I slapped.
Oh, okay. But then what about in general, they don't ask you about it, but then there's like stuff that you just don't bring up?
Yeah. In general, if like they're not asking you and you don't bring it up, I actually think it's healthy. I think I have been in situations where I've been the unhealthy one. Where I've been the unhealthy one and I'm the one that like, I guess it depends on how you bring it up. But if you're bringing up your past, like, oh, my ex used to do this. Like, you're just doing it like this. Mm-hmm. Oh, my ex wrote me a song. Like, you didn't even write me a card. Mm-hmm. Like, that's problematic. Mm-hmm. You're bringing up your past, but you're comparing it to your present and you're saying your partner is not good enough. I don't know how you could bring it up in a healthy way. Like, if you're making pizza together and you say, oh, this is the recipe my ex and I used to use. I'm sure the other person's not going to be happy hearing that. Mm-hmm. Even if you're not using it as a negative thing to attack your current partner. So I just don't see how in a natural conversation you should be bringing up your ex.
Okay. Well, okay. I think I agree with you on that. What if they bring up their ex to try to clear the air? They have some skeletons in their closet. They just want to come clean. They don't want that feeling of guilt to hang over them.
I think that point it gets tricky because then they're doing it just more so for themselves, right? To clear their conscience. Mm-hmm. And you don't know what clearing your conscience is going to do to the other person. You don't know if the other person has the capacity to hear it. You know, you're not really being aware of the other person. Like, if the other person wants to know, I believe they should, give them the space. Let them feel comfortable if they want to ask. But I don't think you should share that with people, because in general, like, I don't like hearing about someone's ex.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, I wouldn't like to know about my partner with other people. Like, that is something that typically tends to make people kind of sad and feel like automatically start comparing and having questions in their mind.
Yeah.
So it's like, even if you are just doing it to, like, you know, clear your guilt, you don't have to. You can clear your guilt to yourself.
Yeah.
Because these are your skeletons in your closet. You need to forgive yourself. It has nothing to do with your partner forgiving you for something you did before you were even with them.
Yeah. Yeah, you convinced me. I think I totally agree. I'm a firm believer that in healthy relationships, you both should be focused on your present and also your future.
And it's hard. Like, don't get me wrong, by the way.
Yeah. And that doesn't mean that I don't think it's important to know the other person's past, because as your lives like in lines like cross and like join, then sometimes it's helpful to understand, like, oh, this is where the other person is coming from. And so I think I changed my answer now to DAP. Like, if they don't bring up their history with other people to their partner, because you should be focused on the present and the future.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you shouldn't ever ask or have conversations about it. And in those moments, you shouldn't hide it.
Yes. And so maybe I'll fix my slap to, like, a dap.
Oh, dang.
That as long as you're
just copying me.
Well, no, because I said mine as, like, if I'm asking you about it and you're hiding it, it's a slap.
See. Yeah.
But if in general you're not bringing it up, that's super good. That's super healthy. It means you're focused on the now.
Yeah.
You know, and you yourself are not comparing things. So.
Yeah, I totally agree. Okay.
You say being on the same side.
Yeah. Hey. We need some, like, fresh blood or something. Nah.
Get someone on here to make us disagree.
Well, actually, I like that we agree, because we come from different backgrounds and then also different life experiences.
That's very true.
And the fact that we can agree on these things shows that we might be onto something.
That they're applicable. Yeah, actually, that's fair.
Yeah. So this might be better for our podcast.
We can hope.
Okay. Well, we hope that this has been helpful for you, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.